back to Room 237, back with another review. And this is a fun one that I'm surprised I haven't talked about yet. I actually double checked to make sure I haven't reviewed this yet because I could have swore I had. It's a fun comedy horror film that actually balances the comedy and the horror very well. Mostly in that the comedy is more in the fun, it pokes at old horror tropes, like old B movie tropes and stuff like that, rather than jokes and gags, even though it's full of gags. It's an independent film from 2007 and probably one of the better films I've seen through the Dimension Extreme label, and it is Teeth. And I love that tagline, every rose has its thorns. Perfect tagline for a movie like this. I also agree with Kirk Honeycutt from The Hollywood Reporter, who says, the most alarming cautionary tale for men since Fatal Attraction. I can agree with that. In a very, probably equally effective, but in a very different way than Fatal Attraction. This can also be seen as a feminist horror film, but in a way that you might not realize it. I mean, sure, the metaphor and the allegory is definitely there, but it doesn't feel overbearing. It doesn't feel ham-fisted. It doesn't feel like it's shoving it in your face, like 2016 Ghostbusters or 2019 Black Christmas. It's not like that at all. Now, it was written and directed by Mitchell Lichtenstein, who I haven't seen anything else he's done. Stars Jess Weixler, who I always confuse with Kirby Bliss Blanton, who was in The Green Inferno. I guess she played Audra in It Chapter 2, which I completely forgot about. John Hensley, who I had just seen in Hostel Part 3. That was my last review. I also recognized Lenny Von Dolan. He was one of the robbers of Home Alone 3, which I remember liking as a kid. Ashley Springer as Ryan. I guess he was in Wolf of Wall Street, but I don't remember who he was. And Hale Appleman. And yes, this is a movie. Trying to make it a comedy was probably the best decision because there really is only one person that could probably take this kind of premise and tell it in a way that it's not absurdly funny or funny in an outrageous way, but can be taken seriously and be effective, and that's David Cronenberg, and this is not a Cronenberg film. But it is about a young teenage girl who discovers that she has teeth in her vagina. Based on, I mean, it's something we've seen 100 times in some form or another. Even Cannibal Corpse's album Worm Infested has like the zombie chick leaning against a tree where just the design of the tree looks like a vagina with teeth coming out of it. But it does mention the Greek mythology about vagina dentata in this. And the whole movie's pretty much allegory or like a metaphor for self-acceptance, approaching womanhood, and just embracing that and who you are. And I think it does do a good job. Jess Weixler plays Dawn, who is part of this abstinence purity ring group, and she takes it very seriously. And then she meets this new kid, Toby, played by Hale Appleman, who, judging by when this came out, the first time I saw this, I was like, are they referencing the Jonas Brothers? I mean, you got purity rings. This guy looks like he's straight out of the Jonas Brothers. He even looks like them. He's part of the group. She starts to have unpure thoughts, and as does he. And during this, she kind of starts to free herself up a little bit. Her father, Lenny Von Dolan, or excuse me, her mother married Lenny Von Dolan, who he has a son named Brad, played by John Hensley. It's the only thing I would say that's weird about the film is his obsession with her, because the movie opens up with them as kids. They're sitting in a wading pool. He decides to play I show you mine, you show me yours. We hear a scream and his finger's bleeding. And I guess they never figure out what happened. But as the film goes on, we find out that he is not only obsessed with her and in love with her, but he always has been, and he resents his parents for getting married and making them brother and sister. Even though he was probably like 4 or 5 at this time. So at best it was probably just a young boy crush, but they make it seem like he was soulmate in love with her ever since then. And he's got these thick mutton chops and listens to heavy metal, taunts Dawn all the time. Insists on only having anal sex with his girlfriend very loudly throughout the house. He's got a Rottweiler named Mother that has a cage that comes inside his room. And just smokes weed and cigarettes right in his bedroom. He's pretty much confined to his bedroom. But he does taunt Dawn several times throughout the film. And so she likes Toby and starts kind of becoming a woman, start feeling the urges to pleasure herself and having sexual thoughts about other people. She's not okay with it. She decides to go on a swim date with Toby that doesn't go well. Ends up with him. I mean, they start kissing, but starts forcing himself upon her. She gets dazed with a hit to the ground. He assaults her, and his penis is bitten off when he goes in. And that's when she finds out she has teeth. And then the rest of the movie is her going from figuring out what's wrong with her and then learning to accept it. That's basically the movie. Now, it is a comedy because it does play a lot on old B-movie tropes. I mean, there's even a couple scenes where like her parents are watching The Black Scorpion on TV. Her brother Brad is watching The Gorgon, an old Hammer movie, which I actually have a pile of Hammer movies that I need to review, and that is one of them. But it also has this very Napoleon Dynamite feel where it looks like it's in the 70s. I mean, we see people with cell phones and using the internet, but it's very minimal. It almost has this 70s... also the setting. I'm not sure where this takes place. I'm guessing somewhere like Washington or Oregon. And it doesn't even say, but... like, off in the distance, I want to say it's green screen, but kind of like Simpsons smokestacks, which it looks cool. It does create this small town setting, you know, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or The Blob or something like that. And it's not that there's a lot of funny lines in the movie, like jokes, even though there is a couple. I mean, when Toby first starts to assault Dawn, he has this line like, I haven't even jerked off since Easter, which I laugh every time I hear it. That's an obvious joke, but I think a lot of the humor is more of like when she discovers vagina dentata through the internet. There's a lot of like the dun 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 dun, and then dun 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 dun. Just how it goes over the top in some places. Like, another time she goes to go see this gynecologist who's very creepy. He insists on not using gloves, and then when he tests her flexibility, he goes in like that, which grabs a hold of him. And, yeah, I mean, he's trying to take his hand out, and he's like, pushing her all over the table. And then when he's on the floor with no fingers, he's just going, dentata, dentata. And she even, the music is still doing that, like, da 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 da. She grabs her stuff and runs out, but da 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 da, ah, da. She stops to look back, screams again, and then it's purposely being over the top in like a classic horror movie kind of way, or like classic Hollywood kind of way. And I think that's where a lot of the comedy comes in. It's not that there's a lot of like jokes in the dialogue, even though there's this other kid, Ryan, who he she reads that the ancient Greeks believed that a hero would come along and conquer these teeth. So he tries to play that role. It loses her virginity consensually, but then she finds out that he only had sex with her not because he likes her, but because he made a bet with a friend of his mid coitus. So bites his off. He lives in the garage with his mother and has an intercom, so he's sitting there bleeding and screaming, and he just hits the button. He's like, "Ma." So it has some jokes, none of which really fall flat or are really unfunny. But I do think most of the humor does come from it bringing those old tropes of classic horror to the present, and just kind of playing with that. And I think it works. Dawn's mother is very sick. It falls down. Brad doesn't do anything but just have sex with his girlfriend. Pretty much lets her die. When Dawn finds this out, plus she knows that he's always been in love with her, wants to have sex with her, so she decides to seduce him. And he's been an asshole through the whole movie. So she seduces him, and that's when he realizes, because he's looking at her face, and he remembers back to the wading pool where there was no blood on her mouth, and he remembers what they were doing. Tries to pull out, but she pulls him in, bites it off. We see he has a Prince Albert, because of course he does. Then the Rottweiler comes in and eats it. And then she just up and leaves. Toby's body is found. The gynecologist and Ryan, we both see them in the hospital getting reattachment surgery. Which the gynecologist, they're like, "You sure you don't want to tell us how this happened?" And he just grabs the anesthesia, and Ryan's already out, and they're like, "This hardly seems worth it." And then, the final shot of the movie, which is that one, she flees town, and she's hitchhiking with this creepy old guy who keeps locking the door so she can't get out, and he just keeps looking at her, smiling, like sticking his tongue out, implying he wants something. And that's when she just kind of gives him like a sexy, seductive look, but also knowing what's going to happen to him. And I think that's both an effective, but also kind of ending, because that old guy's going to get it. It is kind of a cautionary. It is an effective cautionary tale, like Fatal Attraction. Again, very different. I thought the humor worked, especially where most of the humor is just in tropes and how over the top it is. Also, just the absurdity of the premise itself. I thought the acting was good across the board. There really wasn't anyone that was bad. I really liked the small town setting. It didn't, which going into almost parody with those old tropes, the small town, middle of nowhere setting really helped the Body Snatcher, the Blob kind of feel like a comedy version of that. It's plenty gory, all practical effects when you see the little penile stumps. We do see a medical examiner finding a tooth in Toby's stump, saying it's pretty much like the tooth is like a mixture of a shark and an eel. And it's pretty much her growth into a woman. It is done in like a feminist way, but again, not overbearing, not like it's shoving an agenda down your throat, but going from this very headstrong and firm in her belief of abstinence and purity, to almost questioning it, then uh, having something bad happen, not only being sexually assaulted, but then finding out she has this mutation. And then just having enough of everyone around her, overcoming it, and then embracing it. Thus, embracing her own kind of womanhood. So, it's scary for men. And yeah, first time I saw it, I'm like squirming and crossing my legs, like, whew, that would suck. And I see how it could be a positive horror film, a positive, funny horror film for young women as well. So yeah, this is just a fun, enjoyable movie that, yeah, it does have a crazy premise, but you can definitely tell throughout the film that it's aware of what it is and it's just having fun with it. It's not trying to be anything else. And yeah, uh, I've always enjoyed this film. And that is 2007's Teeth, which uh, I think it was kind of a small movement around this time between 2005, 8, 9, where not necessarily horror comedy, some of them were straight up horror films, but sort of bringing the 50s classic B movies back, which actually my next review is going to be another one that's also a comedy. I might like it a little bit more than this one, though I think this one is more, probably more effective in what it's trying to do, whereas the one I'll be doing next, without saying what it is more of just what would a horror comedy done in the style of 50s sci-fi horror be like. I think this one might be more well written. I think the comedy is a bit more uh, more just about the genre itself and just playing with the kind of movie it is. But yeah, uh, I've always enjoyed Teeth. Still squirm a bit when I watch it, but very solid movie. So that is Teeth, and thank you for watching.